What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here, and welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy show. It is actually Thursday, December 5th. Usually we go live on Wednesday, but I had a little scheduling conflict last night, so I didn't want to leave you guys hanging for the week, so we're doing a quick, and this will be quick, maybe 20 to 30 minutes max, but more like 20-minute show here. I'm going to dive right into it because we don't have a lot of time to do a nice little introduction and a little bit of chat. I'm just asking you to drop your questions, say hello in the chat, and we're going to dive right into the topic of today's show so I can cover as many as possible. It is rookies. We're doing a little rookie check-in here. Checking in on some of our key rookies heading into week 14, looking back at their recent performances and rest of season outlook. Thought I'd start us off with, let's start us off with Jayden Daniels. Yeah, let's start off with Jayden Daniels. Why not? He's on a bye week, but he is still arguably, I mean, it's close between him and Bo Nix. They're both making their case there, but Jayden Daniels really coming out with the statement performance this week. 25 completions, 30 attempts, 206 passing yards, not a ton of yardage, very efficient day, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception of rushing touchdowns, back-to-back overall QB1 performances. Quite frankly, I know a lot of people were concerned and, in my opinion, kind of overreacting to what appeared to be a downturn in production for Jayden Daniels after that aggressive start to the season. He had some tougher matchups, right? And some expectations weren't completely met, but all things considered, he was still around a borderline QB1 in difficult matchups. He was also playing through a rib injury, and we know how that often affects quarterbacks, especially mobile quarterbacks in particular. Not just throwing motion, but ability to be mobile in the pocket, willingness to get hit when it comes to the rib injuries, wearing that protective gear as well. Not exactly easy to work around. So for him to be looking a lot better, more like himself on the ground and through the air, and again, 25 completions on 30 attempts. It's just what we have come to expect of Jayden Daniels and his very, very impressive efficiency as a rookie here. When we're looking at his rest of season outlook after the bye week, of course, 2 of the final fantasy, feels weird to say final fantasy, the final fantasy matchups are very, very favorable. So again, that's a situation where we'll be looking at him as a top 5 option. And then one difficult matchup against Philadelphia. We did see that obviously very recently. Underwhelming. It was definitely a floor game, but hopefully in a rhythm and feeling a little bit more removed from the injury, we get a better performance from him, but still somebody that we absolutely trust rest of season for sure. Before I dive into the next rookie, I want to take some questions here from Pod Sun, because we're a mailbag show, so we got to answer questions, right? Also, it's Thursday, so if you have any Thursday questions, feel free to answer them, but try to avoid them, right? Because then the podcast is going to go live on Friday, and then y'all will immediately know if I was wrong, so we don't want to get into that situation. I'm slightly joking there, but go ahead and drop the questions. Noah Gray or Evan Ingram. Please say Noah Gray. No, I'm going to say Evan Ingram. I know Noah Gray it's interesting, right? Because you don't want to come off of Travis Kelce. And the production for Noah Gray has been very, very interesting. And obviously with the receiving core, I don't want to say underwhelming, underwhelming. It's promising. There's some obviously strong veteran presence, and then the youth in Xavier Worthy. But at the end of the day, it's it ain't the receiving core of the LA Rams, right? It's not the receiving core of even the Chicago Bears, right? So obviously leaning on the tight ends does make a lot of sense there. So when we're looking at Evan Ingram, Mac Jones at quarterback, I know is frustrating, right? But he did look decent last week in a good matchup there. Obviously Houston's defense a little bit more vulnerable after Al-Shaair went out, being kicked out of the game there. Obviously, from that point forward, the defense was just a little bit easier to attack for Jacksonville. So yeah, moving forward there, Mac Jones at quarterback is obviously not appealing, but Evan Ingram will still have volume there. And it's the known volume with him that we at least want to lean into. So I get Noah Gray and wanting to lean in there, but I would still go with Evan Ingram, to be honest. James Conner or Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, touchdown saved his day, to be quite frank there. I still am concerned about his overall consistency, his efficiency, how he is dealing with wear and tear of the season. My preference there is to go with James Conner. Seattle's defense has pulled it together a little bit as the season has gone on, but Conner is still more of the workhorse running back that I trust more compared to the two. Oh, good question here. Tracy Garindo or Jonnu? Pick two. You hate to sit Jonnu, right? And I assume you've got it. Obviously, you've probably drafted somebody with high upside at tight end. The only guys that I'm starting, like just for reference, the tight end rankings that I have right now, the only guys that I'm starting over Jonnu Smith would be Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, and George Kittle, because I do like this matchup for him. Those are the only four guys that I would play over Jonnu. So for perspective, if you've got a tight end other than any of those guys, I quite frankly would switch them out, sit them. I would sit a David Njoku, I would sit a TJ Hawkinson and Evan Ingram, Sam Laporta, Cade Otton, all of those guys for Jonnu. So if that makes your decision a little bit easier to switch out Jonnu into the tight end position and then play both Tracy and Garindo, maybe that would help you out a little bit there. But looking at just playing a tight end over two lead running backs, and I know Tracy's volume last week was underwhelming, but he has been very efficient and solid with the volume that he's getting. He is the clear lead back there, does offer receiving upside. So even though I love Jonnu and the production that he's been having in that Miami offense, I would still play the running backs there and go with Tracy and Garindo. But again, if you don't have one of those top four tight ends that I mentioned, I straight up would swap out Jonnu Smith for them. And just checking on consensus real quick, because I am kind of curious about where consensus is on Jonnu Smith. Nope, they're in the exact same place as me. He is the consensus in Fantasy Pros ECR, consensus tight end 5. There are only 4 guys we are playing over him this week. Jonnu is king right now. Good for him. Fits perfectly in that offense. From William, how serious is Jamar Chase ankle injury? I'm sorry, I don't. From my perspective, I haven't seen anything that indicates there's anything that would hold him out this week. So not concerned. Limited practice when it's limited. I'm not panicking, especially on a Thursday. If you've got at least a limited practice on a Thursday, then more than likely we're probably good to go. So I wouldn't worry at all. From Paul Gregory, who's new. Welcome in, Paul. Just picked up Caleb Williams off waivers. Have Tua Tagovailoa on your roster. Want to stream between the two of them. Any advice? This week, Tua for sure. Caleb Williams, we've got DJ Moore dealing with the injury. And obviously, we would know more tomorrow about whether or not DJ Moore is going to be available. But if he's not available, while the rest of the receiving core is obviously, Rome is so talented and Keenan Allen is Keenan Allen. At the same time, DJ Moore is a loss, so that would make me just bumping back just like a teeny, tiny bit. Still very stream worthy. But Tua, feeling comfortable with, and oddly enough, I actually talked about Tua. No, I didn't talk about Tua last week. I've got an article on my Yahoo Writers page specifically on Tua that I did, I think, 2 weeks ago, talking about his rest of season outlook there. And with Tua, rest of season, I actually feel comfortable with him in every single game heading up to not the championship game. That is the only game where I have any concern for Tua. That is because it is at Cleveland. And obviously we know that, Tua, while he did fine in the Green Bay cold weather in terms of fantasy production, Tua in cold weather, it doesn't mix. And Cleveland's cold weather, final fantasy game of the season. No, I can't trust it. But this week against the Jets defense that has obviously been struggling since they so unfairly fired Robert Saleh. I will die on that hill that was not right. That was not okay. And no wonder their defense has taken a downturn there, unfortunately. I feel comfortable starting him. It's at Miami, right? So we feel good about Tua this week. The Jets defense it ain't the same defense that we had before. Jerry Jeudy or Jacoby Myers. God, I love both these guys. But I'm guessing rest of season because we don't get Jeudy this week, unfortunately. But rest of season, it's interesting because we'll see, Cedric Tillman come back after the bye. And obviously that would potentially affect the excuse me. I got confused for a second and had a momentary lapse of Jerry Jeudy in Denver because Denver is on the bye there. Obviously, that is not the case. But Jerry Jeudy this week, sorry. As I started talking there, I remembered, oh my gosh, I'm referencing Denver on the bye, and we're talking about Cleveland and Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman, obviously, potentially coming back here could affect the target share within that offense there. But I feel like even before then, Jerry Jeudy was kind of starting to show that, potential of him being that wide receiver one in the offense. So matchup is not ideal here. I don't hate Jameis in this matchup. Obviously, he's potentially is good. This kind of profiles as a lower scoring game, in my opinion. Jerry Jeudy should still be fine, kind of a borderline option there. But Jacoby Myers with the excellent matchup, that's the direction we want to lean. He is questionable, so we have to monitor that one. But if we have a healthy Jacoby Myers, we do want to start him over Jerry Jeudy. Chubb or ETN? Chubb for sure. ETN and that really just the Jags backfield as a whole, unfortunately, is just wildly unstable with the usage of them and the underperforming, the split of the carries. I don't like leaning into either him or Tank Bigsby as long as they're both on the field, unfortunately. Choose two, Jauan Jennings, Watson, or Addison. I don't mind taking the risk with Jordan Addison, obviously, similar to Watson in terms of like boom bust kind of nature there, but his ceiling is just so much higher than Watson. So Addison for sure. And then I'm willing to give Jauan Jennings a chance. I'm kind of interested in this 49ers receiving core as we're moving forward through the remainder of the season without Christian McCaffrey, because while, theoretically we could see targets towards Isaac Guerrero, he is no Christian McCaffrey as a pass catcher. So in my opinion, some of that pass volume that has been slated for going to Christian McCaffrey could tilt back towards the receiving core. So we could see an uptick in volume here for the receivers and George Kittle as well. So McCaffrey going down could really benefit them. And Jennings has obviously stepped up ahead of Deebo Samuel. Hopefully now, Brock Purdy was not himself last week dealing with the injury. Obviously, they rushed him out there trying to get that win there. But Purdy should be healthier this week. Benefits Jauan Jennings. That's the one that I would prefer to go with as well. So we are sitting Watson on that question. Cade Otton or Jake Ferguson if he plays. I lean towards Cade Otton. I'm not a Luke Schoonmaker truther, but he did look good, right? So I could see where he warrants, a little bit more playtime potentially taking over, not completely over for Jake Ferguson, but taking some of that production, some of that upside down there. I actually like the receivers in this matchup. Beyond, if you're looking for deep options beyond CeeDee Lamb, I don't hate having to play Brandon Cooks in this one or a super deep league. Kevontae Turpin, you could turn to. Something about Jake Ferguson and the presence of Luke Schoonmaker after the way he performed when he was out makes me a little bit uncomfortable, especially considering the draft capital that they put into Luke Schoonmaker, which is higher than it should have been. But hey, it's still a second-round pick. Very interesting. I'm going to show this comment because I like this comment, which I like Steve Smith. But yeah, he doesn't have good things to say about Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, he's unfortunately kind of had to. He took that stance on Jerry Jeudy, essentially calling him just a guy. And it had validity at the time, but in defense of Jerry Jeudy somewhat, he hasn't had the best situation there, unfortunately, in Denver. So him getting out of Denver and having increased opportunities in Cleveland with Amari Cooper moving on, being able to pop under a different system, under a different coach, with a different quarterback. We have to remember that a lot of times, like Jerry Jeudy, a lot of his career prior to Russell Wilson, and even with Russell Wilson, things didn't really work out for a lot of people beyond Cortland Sutton. It's not as if Jeudy had a lot of talent that he was working with at the quarterback position, right? So I give Jerry Jeudy a little bit of pass on that one. I also held on to Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty, so I am thrilled on that one. So maybe I'm a little biased, but we'll do one more question. Actually, I'm going to take some questions on TikTok while I send you guys, even though we've got a short show. I do want to do a little bit of a commercial break here for you guys. So on the YouTube and Twitter, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors. And I'll be right back after this.
Oh, incredible news about Fast Draft. Fast Draft DFS is live. It's called the Flex 6 Frenzy. You just draft 6 guys, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends for the Sunday slate. You like Jahmyr Gibbs? You like Jackson Smith and Jigba? You like Tyrone Tracy? Draft him, draft him, draft him. And the beauty is you can just order 5 teams, submit your rankings, and Fast Draft will email you the results. We awarded $1,000 in prizes our first week, and we're just going up from there. Soon there's going to be a select 6. No drafting at all. You just pick any 6 guys. Our DFS mantra, just say no to salaries on Fast Draft. Don't forget there's free tools on Fast Draft too. You want to get ready for startup season? We've created the best Dynasty mock draft experience there is. And if you want to play in these DFS contests and our best ball contest for 2025 are coming very soon too, just use promo code PODFATHER when you deposit and you get a free draft. It's that easy. And you're like, oh, I already have Fast Draft. Great. Refer a friend. Have them put your username in as the promo code, and then you and your friend will both get an instant deposit match up to $25. We got DFS. We got Dynasty Mocks. We got Best Ball. It's all there for you on fastdraft.app. Check it out. And the promo code is PODFATHER.
All right, we are back. I think we're going to go for about 10 more minutes here. I always say try to limit us. I said we were doing a 20-minute show. Now that we've got talking and I've been answering questions that I still have stuff to talk about, I guess we're running a little bit longer, and I will just make it work here. Before I answer some additional questions here, I did want to talk another rookie quarterback. That is the topic of the show here, Caleb Williams. And this is an interesting one because we've got DJ Moore dealing with the injury, and obviously since they made the change in offensive coordinator and admitted that Shane Waldron should never be an offensive coordinator ever again, things have been a lot better for Caleb Williams and the entire Bears receiving corps. There was like a hope for the future here. Obviously, DJ Moore being out would put a major dent in this unfortunate situation here in terms of his upside, because he is a borderline QB1 right now, like right on that cusp. Without DJ Moore, I might bump him back like a tiny bit here, but he showed so much promise, right? Bad thing is that it's still shaky, right? It's not as if when we look at that matchup from Thanksgiving, it's not as if we had a situation where he just looked entirely impressive throughout the entire game. No, it was a horrible first half. Everyone suffered. Caleb looked a mess. Nothing was going right. And then obviously they pulled things together in the back half. He's a rookie. He's still working through it. Finished with 256 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 to Keenan Allen, and added some good rushing yards on the ground there. The rushing upside has been very welcome from a fantasy perspective. But hey, now we have had 2 QB1 performances from him over the past couple of weeks. He's been looking a lot better. The Bears, obviously, they losing, right? And their head coach fired. Thank goodness Matt Eberflus gone. Despite all those changes, though, Williams has not only looked more competent in everything that he's dealing with, offensive line issues, things just really genuinely being a hot mess overall. He has been as mistake-free as you could possibly be given all of those issues. And, there's other ways that you make mistakes, clock management and fumbles and whatnot, but he hasn't thrown an interception since week 6 and doing fantastic with his upside there. His accuracy has been a little bit suspect. The offensive line, again, struggling here, but he's throwing for volume. Touchdowns are happening, and he's been more trustworthy with the football. Rest of season, we're not feeling super confident, right? Because on paper, it's bad. On paper, San Francisco, Minnesota, Detroit, all terrible matchups. But San Francisco's defense obviously been a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit unsteady, dealing with injuries. Nick Bosa is a major one. And at the same time, Minnesota and Detroit, he just played those teams and had strong performances against both of them. So rest of season, this is absolutely someone from a redraft perspective that we're feeling decently confident about as a streaming option. Dynasty wise, and then looking ahead to 2025, we do have to kind of temper our expectations here, because let's make a comparison between, let's say, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams. One of these things is not like the other in terms of their situation, and that is Caleb, unfortunately. Bo is in a stable situation, a head coach that will be there. A young receiving core that is growing with him, plus Cortland Sutton. Jayden Daniels, stable situation. Coaches are not going to change. Not going to lose. Your coaches right there. You obviously, when we're looking at their offseason, they're probably going to invest in an additional receiver. Positive changes that will happen there for them. So excellent situation for Jayden Daniels. Drake May. Obviously, team is having a struggle year. Offensive line issues, not a lot of weapons here. But again, he won't have to change and learn a new system. Same coaching staff. No one's getting fired there in New England. And this was an expected rebuilding year for them. And now they have the off season and the draft capital to be able to invest into a better offensive line and some more weapons for him. So it's a little bit different for Caleb Williams in the fact that he is going to have to go through what Justin Fields went through, unfortunately, what a Baker Mayfield went through, unfortunately, what a Trevor Lawrence went through, unfortunately, of you're getting a change in systems and coaching staffs and processes literally in your sophomore year. It's never fun. So he's going to have to, continue to develop because of his circumstances, unfortunately. Which again means that maybe it's something that if you're looking at it from a draft redraft perspective, a best ball perspective, a dynasty perspective, Williams is someone that maybe you can take that investment on in terms of him being the rookie in the most vulnerable situation in terms of the volatility of their coaching staff. So, that's not a bad outlook for him in terms of the investments that we can make into him and more of long-term goals with him overall. Let's answer some more questions here. Tony Pollard, Connor, or Kupp, pick two. A difficult matchup, but Kupp is still obviously someone who has a ton of upside here. And James Conner, for sure. We talked about him earlier and the potential that he offers in that matchup. Tony Pollard, who I love. The matchup, unfortunately, is not a major issue, but it's the fact that we have that situation where Tajay Spears' presence, unfortunately, just really caps the overall upside that Tony Pollard could have. He could do a lot more. He could handle a lot more, but they're limiting him in the volume. Personally, I don't truly get it because it's not like they're, and maybe they're preparing for the future, right? They don't want to put too much workload onto him as they end the season, knowing that this season is a done deal for them essentially. And they're just moving on to, looking ahead to their 2025 roster and preserving Pollard for that. Maybe that's, could be illogical. You don't want to overload him. He's not a back that you want to overload in terms of workload. So possible there, but it just makes him someone who is unreliable in terms of upside, unfortunately, despite the decent matchup here. Hi, Albert. Since I got a hello from Albert, I'm saying hey to you, showing your comment real quick. Let's do another question here. How are we feeling about Jameson tonight? Where do we have him ranked? So Jameson right now for me, and I always feel better about Jameson than anybody else because I like Jameson and that was my boy heading into the season, and he's done ups and downs, right? But he has done exactly what I said. He has low end wide receiver 2 overall potential, and that is what he has performed as. So he has met my expectations. I am happy with him overall. This is an interesting one though, because I am debating right now around Jameson Williams. Actually, let's see. Do I have my Scott Fishbowl team up right now? No. Where's my Scott Fishbowl team? I'm not going to find it. I'm actually debating whether or not I include Jameson Williams in my Scott Fishbowl team because we're making it. We made it through the playoffs. We are still in it right there. Good chance to move on. And he has upside, but I am concerned comparing him to a guy like Keenan Allen if DJ Moore were to be out. The potential upside that instability that a Keenan Allen could offer versus Jameson being boom bust. That said, Green Bay's pass defense is strong. But if there's a way for them to be vulnerable, the wide receiver 2s have come through. The only concern that I have here And again, this is kind of just debating things out as we're talking it through here in terms of how we're looking at Jameson Williams. While he is the wide receiver 2, he is the one that is going deeper in terms of the coverage that he would receive. And Amon-Ra obviously playing more slot, more underneath here, which might bode well for him in this matchup with the Packers. So that's the only concern there I have for Jameson, is that honestly, Jameson could technically receive the more difficult coverage from the secondary just because of the 2 different roles that they play. That said, the Packers are a highly intelligent team. Their number 1 priority will be to shut down Amon-Ra. And if Jameson is the one that beats them, so be it. So I'm still okay with starting Jameson for me. He's ranked right now for me as my wide receiver 20. Come on, internet. Wide receiver 27. Which is right on par with ECR. Fantasy Pros ECR has him at wide receiver 28. So he's a flex-worthy option. We're not fading him. Difficult matchup, but there is the potential for him to go off on this one. So if you're looking for a high upside option, Jameson is the one that I would turn to. Ironically, I have Keenan Allen ranked right behind him, as that was the guy that I was just talking about here. But again, he's just right in that kind of middling area between guys who have some situational issues like Juwan Jennings, Khalil Shakir, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Brian Thomas, obviously. So flex worthy wise, good upside, but again, a little bit risky. We're still playing him though. I think I did Cade Otton or Jake. No, I haven't gotten that combination yet. Cade Otton or Jake Ferguson. I did talk about Ferguson earlier in the skepticism I have around his overall upside with the way that Schoonmaker looked while he was out. I would not be shocked at all if we saw Schoonmaker see a slight increase in snap count, enough to really take away that upside for Ferguson. My preference there is Cade Otton for sure. Good question here from Julia. Parker Washington or Jake Ferguson full PPR. Obviously, in theory, Jake Ferguson is the safer option. I'm personally willing to risk it and go with Parker Washington. I actually just wrote an article that came out maybe 2 hours ago on my Yahoo Writers page, talking about the potential upside that Parker Washington offers in this matchup. So I can touch on that in a second here, because people looking for some deeper options, Parker Washington is absolutely one of them. And it's not reactionary, because I know it probably feels like you're reacting to that, big blow up game last week and saying, okay, was it a random breakout and we're not going to see that level of usage? I think that, that level of upside won't come through again, but he's certainly very playable this week. We see, and we have seen in this season, an uptick in production in terms of snap count and targets for Parker Washington when Gabe Davis has been out. Gabe Davis obviously on IR and out again here. So I think Parker Washington's upside kind of sticks rest of season, in my opinion. And Mac Jones is obviously not someone who we super trust, but he did play the majority of that game last week. And also looking at the matchup here between the Titans and the Jags, it's very interesting to me. This is a game where I like Will Levis and I don't like Mac Jones, but I like the potential for Mac Jones to contribute to the fantasy production for Brian Thomas, Evan Ingram, and Parker Washington, because this is projected to be a lower scoring matchup. The over-under is 40.5 on this one, but relatively close. I can't remember who the favorite is. I should know that. I can't remember who it is, but the difference, whoever the favorite is, it's like 3.5 points, I believe. So we're expecting this to be a game where both of these teams, lower volume, but relatively close here. And that's the key here for success for both of these teams. We don't want either of these quarterbacks in situations where they're having to chuck it from behind, right? We don't want them down significantly. We want them in more competitive games. Last week's game for Jacksonville was a more competitive game. Mac Jones looked fine. I think when he's in a competitive game and the defense is adequate and there's a decent back and forth here and he can, not have to chuck in and rely decently on the run game here, we do have some upside there for him. So I do like Parker Washington this week. More questions here. Rico Dowdle or Garrett Wilson? Rico Dowdle. We're leaning into Rico Dowdle here. The matchup, right? The matchup is excellent. Should I play? Should I play golf? Oh, it says golf. I thought it says golf, and I was like, should I play golf tonight? No, should I play golf tonight or wait till Sunday for Kyler Murray? This is 100% based off whether or not this is a personal preference here. I do have Kyler Murray clearly ranked higher than Jared Goff. I do like the matchup better for Kyler Murray than I do for Jared Goff. I am okay with foregoing Goff and playing Murray, but you as a fantasy manager have to assess if you're okay with that risk, right? Because Goff is probably the safer option in terms of floor. Kyler Murray has been a more volatile asset. My preference would be to go with Kyler Murray, but if you're in a position where you don't feel like you can take a risk, Green Bay's defense has allowed decent fantasy performances to opposing quarterbacks. So I don't think it'll be a bad game from Jared Goff. He's still ranked as a QB1, so it's not a wrong direction to go. But my preference is Kyler Murray on this one. But you do have to acknowledge that it is a little bit more risky. Yeah, it will determine playoffs or bust. Okay, if it's that close, I would risk it with Kyler and just lean into the upside on that one. If it's that close, yeah, I would risk it with Kyler. Do you foresee any sleepers? Maybe Vidal or Pearsall. While I love Kamani Vidal, I don't know if they're going to turn this offense over to him in any significant form. So I feel like at best, the LA Chargers backfield is going to be just messy as a whole, in my opinion. If we want to go for a deeper sleeper of who I think could have some potential moving forward, keep your eye on Sincere McCormick. I know that feels weird to say, like, Sincere, like, just keep your eye on him because he has been by far the best running back for the LA Raiders, or Las Vegas Raiders. It has not even been close. I would prefer to go with someone like Sincere McCormick, who has a realistic possibility of immediately ascending and earning that RB1 role in Vegas, like legitimately this week. If I'm as a coach, Antonio Pierce, sitting there and trying to decide between Sincere McCormick, Alexander Madison, and Zamir White and Amir Abdullah, I'm looking at Sincere McCormick and I'm wanting to run him out there. So that's one that I would stash him on my bench. I don't know if I have the guts to start him this week. I can't say I would do that, but a stash that you want to, I would lean to Sincere McCormick over Kamani Vidal because of the immediate impact that he could make, and not have to, like, Kamani Vidal would have to see some kind of injury potentially to Gus Edwards to truly take over that backfield, in my opinion. So that's a preference there. And then you also mentioned Ricky Pearsall, who I love, but unfortunately, I just don't know if the volume is going to be there for him rest of season. It would probably be another injury situation as well. Paul Gregory, Kenneth Walker, or Isaac Guerrero. I do have Walker higher, and Guerrero keeps creeping up in the rankings for sure. But Walker is one. Now, granted, Walker is questionable as well, dealing with an injury, but it's a limited practice, so I don't think it's a big deal at all. But Walker is the one that would be my preference on there. Especially when you're looking at that Arizona defense. They've been strong. I think the running game would have a little bit more of an advantage than the pass in this matchup, in my opinion. A couple more questions here. Actually, let's talk about one more rookie real quick so I can feel like I did my full service in terms of talking about the main topic of the show. Let's talk about Malik Neighbors here. Malik Neighbors rest of season, just because I don't feel like we should panic over Neighbors in any way, shape, or form rest of season. The key there for him is volume. It doesn't matter who is starting at quarterback. He is the clear and only option in that receiving core, and the volume is going to him, and double-digit targets just remains the reality for him on a week-to-week basis there. Touchdowns, they're not coming, unfortunately. It's been like 5,000 years since we've seen a touchdown from Malik Neighbors, unfortunately. But the volume is there. Wish the yardage were a little bit higher, but he's just a very safe option rest of season. And looking at him ahead to 2025, Malik Neighbors genuinely, like if we're doing best ball drafts, like pre-draft, like, oh my gosh, invest in Neighbors in any way, shape, or form that you can in terms of pre-draft, especially with best ball, just because they're essentially a lock for a new quarterback, right? It's just a matter of who is it going to be? Is it going to be Cam Ward, or is it going to be Shedeur? It's going to be one of them. And this new quarterback coming in, anybody is going to be an improvement in terms of getting the ball to Malik Neighbors here. So our outlook for him, extremely strong. Thank you to the Giants for continuing to just put themselves in a negative position that will put them in a positive position for the draft. So that's another one as well. And then rest of season outlook, one real quick for Tyrone Tracy, especially because we're getting a lot of Tyrone Tracy questions here. At this point, although we've seen like a mild uptick occasionally for Devin Singletary, and the fumbling did become a wee bit of an issue there, it seems like they are comfortable with Tracy. He's clearly the better back. And it seems like they're comfortable with Tracy moving forward. And Tracy has a lot of incentive rest of season, especially when we're looking at the Giants' usage of him rest of season. They need to know what they have. I think they know, but they need to continue to evaluate truly what they have in Tyrone Tracy to know if they need to invest any draft capital into a running back, because free agency is probably not going to be the place where they can get somebody. Free agents, running backs have been locked down in contracts, right? So instead of Chuba Hubbard hitting the market, he's staying in there in Carolina. We got the extension for James Conner, right? So there's not a ton on the market beyond Najee Harris. So in my opinion, the Giants are going to spend rest of season really giving Tracy the opportunity to prove himself. I feel comfortable with him as a solid RB2 with true RB1 upside rest of the way, just because there's the potential for him to continue and remain in that lead back role in 2025 as well. A few more questions here, and then I'm going to head out. Thielen or Jameson Williams or Pacheco need to. This one is tough because Thielen is kind of interesting in terms of the volume that he has seen since coming back from IR. At the same time, I don't like this matchup. I would 100% go ahead and start Jameson. And then between Pacheco and Thielen, I lean towards Pacheco on that one. Start two between Juwan, Debo, and Addison. It's Juwan and Addison. We struggle to trust, unfortunately, Debo Samuel. Pacheco or Warren. I would start Pacheco over Warren. Comparatively, Jaylen Warren obviously offers potential upside there, but at the end of the day, it's still a split backfield, and they do lean preference towards Najee Harris as well. Is CeeDee Lamb playing? I don't think he's officially been cleared, but from what I'm seeing, we shouldn't have any worry about CeeDee Lamb. He should be good to go. Injury, it felt like that was more of a game situation of pulling him out and saying, okay, it doesn't feel good, right? Because he had been dealing with the injury prior to the game. So maybe just precautionary. It sounds like he's going to play this week. So feel comfortable with CeeDee Lamb, even though last week was uncomfortable, especially because it's a good matchup here for sure. And quite frankly, CeeDee Lamb, he'll want to show off in this matchup. Obviously, a battle of top receivers there. Swift or 49ers new running back. I would go ahead with Isaac Rindo. I would. Oh, good question. Defensive question there. Seattle or Arizona. Seattle or Arizona's defense this week. I lean now. Granted, they're both given the bye week issues. They're both top 12 options. I lean towards Seattle's defense just because Kyler can be Kyler and turnovers can come. So I lean towards Seattle's defense just a wee bit on that one. Amari or Waddle, I would start Jalen Waddle over Amari for sure. Amari, unfortunately, within the context of that Buffalo offense, just hasn't shown the upside that we want to see from him. One more question and then we'll wrap things up. I went way longer than I was supposed to, and I've got 15 minutes till another show here. So Baker or Jordan Love. I have Baker ranked higher right now. And that is because he does have the higher upside. and the better matchup against Vegas. I know it has been underwhelming for him recently, and that is because they have been able to so aggressively lean on the run game. Bucky Irving dealing with the injury, though, so perhaps that could make things shift a tiny bit. So keep your eye on that. Baker is the one that I have ranked higher. But that wraps things up, guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. As a reminder, this is the Dear Miss Fantasy show. Thank you. It is a podcast. So if you are listening to the podcast, feel free and please do subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. Anyone else, if you're, watching on TikTok or Twitter or YouTube, also make sure that, maybe go in and subscribe to the podcast as well. We would appreciate the support. Make sure that you're also subscribed to Player Profiler, and then make sure that you're following me. That would be wonderful on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff at It's Tera Time, ITSTERATIME. But that wraps things up. Good luck with your fantasy lineups. I appreciate you all tuning in. I will see you again next week.